how to do it correctly in World of Tanks. First I'm going to start out going over like what armor angling is and how it works. So here you could see that the you have the shell coming in here at a pretty steep angle, and it shows how it's going to bounce off because the angle is not great enough to actually penetrate the armor. Because of the way it comes in, the armor is too effective right here. And this diagram shows a little bit better. It shows the overall armor thickness here, this white line, and you can see with the way the shell's actually traveling towards the armor, that's the overall effective, and this white line is obviously much longer than this white line, and makes the depending on where the shell comes in, the armor is actually going to be thicker or thinner depending on what angle the shell comes in. So I'll show this on tanks.gg here, just give you a representation of actual armor thicknesses and how it changes with angling. So you see here you have about 230, 240 millimeters of armor on the lower plate of the mouse, and about 310 on the upper plate, and then 250 along the turret, 240. Now when you angle the mouse, you see here the lower plate went from about 240 to 280 now, upper plate from 310 to upwards of like 370, 350, and then from 350, 340 on the turret it goes up to like 270. And obviously the more you angle, the thicker the armor is. Now the lower plate's 400 millimeters thick, like you're not going to pen that. There's also a thing to note, depending on the type of shell you're actually using. This will show it here. There's a correction angle. Like with AP shells in the game, you get 5 degrees of correction, which means that when the shell hits the target, it'll automatically correct to try to make its way go like straight into the armor a little bit by like 5 degrees. And this shows, this shell has 10-degree correction angle. This shows that with the way without the correction angle, this is the path it would take, but with the correction angle it actually takes this path, so there's a greater chance of it penetrating the target. The way this works in World of Tanks, AP shells get 5 degrees, APCR shells get 2 degrees of normalization, and heat shells get no degrees of normalization. So now I'm going to go in game and just run some games, show ways to block armor. Let's see. Just going to block as much damage as I can and show you guys how you should angle certain tanks the best way in order to get bounces. So I'm going to start out with the mouse here, which is arguably the most heavily armored tank in the game. There's a little bit of spaced armor on the side of the mouse, which helps against heat shells, helps absorb them. Right here where the tracks are, you can see that bit of armor there. That's spaced armor. That'll help a lot with heat shells. But the way you want to angle the mouse, as you saw on that program, is about like this for the actual hole, and then you want to angle the turret even more so, because there is a lot of armor on the side of the turret of the mouse. So say you have an enemy, say that tortoise is facing me and he's shooting at me, you want to angle the turret about like that towards where the tortoise is right now in order to get the best armor effectiveness out of the turret. And then you'd want to angle the hole about like that. So we'll go find some enemies here and show them practice a little bit. I'm gonna be playing a bunch of heavily armored tanks. I'll play the E100 after this. I'll do the IS-7 because that's an interesting tank with the way the angling works on that, because it has a pike nose, so it's a little bit different. It's not as cut and dry as some of the like German tanks are and stuff, when you like how you angle your armor. But there's a bunch of different ways you can angle armor. You could angle armor by pointing like up hills, like this little incline here. That'll actually make my upper plate thicker if someone's shooting from below me, but it'll effectively make my lower plate thinner if they hit that. It's all things you have to think about when you're fighting and trying to get your enemies to bounce. The only bad part about the mouse being so heavily armored is how slow it is here, as you can see. This enemy E5 is pushed up pretty far. Get a good shot in him. Just gonna play as forward as I can. Just try to get the enemies to bounce as much as possible. So now at this angle, the E5, if you were to come around, has a really good shot on my lower plate. So see here, I'm hiding my lower plate, angling my turret, and he ended up bouncing, shooting my spaced side armor there. Let's see where the round hit. Came around the corner there, he just caught my my inner track. If he would have aimed it a little bit better, he might have been able to penetrate that. And there, he shot my side armor again at a bad angle. Now I want to angle my turret here. And he decided not to shoot me, because I'm not worth it. So right there, we took no damage whatsoever. The T-32 put a round into our mud flaps there. Well, I don't know if they're really mud flaps, but pretty much what they are. And that's not going to pen at all, just because it's not part of the actual tank. Just spaced armor along the side. And in heavily armored tanks, and even some medium tanks, you always want to try to get your enemies to bounce. It's always worth to angle your armor, no matter how much penetration they have or how little armor you have, because you never know. There's, with the amount of RNG in the game, there's always a chance that the round will hit at a funky angle and bounce. So, and the more angling you do, effectively, the better it is that the shell's gonna bounce. Because there is a certain point where shells will auto bounce off your tank if the angle is too steep. So you definitely have to keep that in mind when you're shooting at enemy tanks and when you're trying to angle your own armor. Now I need to try to get back to base here and defend as long as I can. If the enemy decides to throw all three mediums on cap, they'll probably cap out here, so. $13.90 might be sneaking up behind us. The enemy's decided not to cap, so that means they're gonna be coming after me. Against multiple opponents, obviously it's going to be more and more difficult to angle your armor at different people when they're shooting at you from different sides. So Carnivana had straight a perfect shot into the side of my tank, and that's going to pen every time. See where he shot me there? That's not spaced armor. Spaced armor is only where the tracks are, so it's better to shoot a Moss in the higher upper part of the side. See here, I'm trying to angle my armor as best as I can. The D50 bounced his shot. 1390 has very little chance of being able to actually pin me. Leopard just trapped me. I'd be careful, this E50 is probably going to kill me. Too slow when I turn around. But we absorbed a lot of damage. We'll check the stats after this game's over. See how we did. But right now we'll hop into another tank and try to bounce some more shots. Okay, we'll jump into the E100 here. This is another tank that you have to angle a lot in order to be able to get bounces. So I was saying before with the, if you look here, this is what I was talking about with the auto bounce angle. You see here it says, let me switch to it, 0% chance to pen, because the angle would just be too great. If like a shell came in this way, it's just gonna bounce off like that, and just like this. The angle is too great in order to be able to pen the armor. Back in game here, try to bounce some more shells. Now the E100's armor is not as strong as the mouse is on paper, but you can, it's still very difficult to get through if angled properly. And the sides of the tank are arguably stronger just because there's spaced armor along the whole side instead of just a little bit. We got a lot of people going hill in this match. Gotta be careful because they might sneak up the 1-2 line. Start putting pressure on our base. Try to get up here and get a free shot into this IS-8. He's playing pretty far forward, so. See how I'm angling my turret here towards this 1-2-1. He's not really concerned with me right now, but it's always good practice just to angle, no matter what. Got hit by archer for quite a bit of damage. It's one thing you cannot angle against is artillery. Well, you can if they're shooting AP rounds. I see I'm angling my turret out a little bit here. It's not straight at them. I was able to get a bounce off my turret with the heat round fired by the IS-8. T-30 there. See, I didn't angle my turret. He was able to pin me straight through the front. they have a I think there, the T-30 managed to hit my lower plate. I had to try to get out of that position though, Artie was just raining death on me. So let's take a look at that mouse game, see how we did. So we blocked 3,300 damage with the armor, which is, it's pretty standard in a mouse to block about that much damage. We took about that much damage too. So I mean, that's pretty good. Well, let's play the IS-7 here. So when it comes to angling the IS-7, it's a little bit different than normal. This is a good city map, good matchmaking as well. Not too many enemy heavy tanks. Not too many heavy tanks in our team either though. Now with the IS-7, the pike nose, it's weird how it works because the lower plate is a weak spot, and in order to get bounces off the lower plate, you have to angle it. Then that also makes the upper front plate thinner, and you could pin that more easily. So what you want to do in the IS-7 is just try to keep your lower plate hidden at all costs, but if you are in the open, you could angle it about this way, I'd say. It's probably your best bet for your highest chance to get a bounce, because of how effective your upper plate is versus your lower plate. You could sacrifice some of the armor on the upper plate by angling to get a little bit more armor, effective armor on the lower plate, that is. Now the turret of the IS-7 is rounded, and rounded turrets are always better than flatter turrets like the 100 has, just because there's more angles built into it. It's just going to be harder to pin by default that way. Hit that T-54 at a weird angle there on the top of his turret. A little unfortunate, that shot went high, but here you can see me side scraping. I'll go over that in more detail with when we play the mouse again. See, now here I'm just trying to hide my lower plate. See that E5 managed to pin through my upper plate there when I angled it towards him a little bit. And that's the problem with the IS-7. If you give it front on, your lower plate's weaker, but like I said, if you angle it like this, your upper plate's weaker, so you gotta just be careful with it. See here, I angled out. I paid attention where the corner was and got him to shoot my upper plate at a really steep angle, and he managed to bounce. That's something you could do too, in like the IS-3 or the IS-7. Just pay attention to the corner, or anything really with the angled upper front plate. Pay attention where the corner is, and you're able to sometimes bait shots from your enemies. Already hit me for quite a bit there. Centurion bounced off though. I need to be careful here because I have a 430 sniping in the back. Trying to hide my my lower play as much as I can. This 430's trying to snipe right now. As you can see, he has a couple of penetrations there. He managed to get me. So we'll see how we did in that E100 game. We didn't do too great. Problem with the E100 is, as soon as the enemies start loading heat, they could pen through your turret pretty easily, just because it's not pre-angled. Dogs freaking out. Okay, let's see how we did on the E100 game. So I blocked 2,500, which is pretty good. We didn't block as much as I wanted to. We received 12 hits, 5 penned, and 7 didn't pen. So most of the damage we received was from already there, but it happens. Let's go into the KV4, because this tank is probably one of the most heavily armored tanks at tier 8 overall, that is. So this is really good matchmaking. Armor is going to be that much more effective here. KV4 has, I believe, the best side armor at tier 8, and it can really troll people. It's about 170-ish millimeters thick on the side if you include the tracks. So it's very, very thick side armor at tier 8, and you could side scrape with it very well. And I'll show you guys some side scraping here a little bit. This map isn't too great for side scraping, but we'll see what we could do though. So we'll side scrape off this mountain here, just so I can show you guys what I'm talking about. You see here, this is about what the WZ sees, and my my armor is my side armor is angled so great that he has pretty much no chance of being able to pin me there if he were to shoot me. So yeah, it's a tactic you could do in pretty much any tank, really. Just because the way the tracks work in this game, they could eat shots a lot of the times for no damage done to your tank. Only your tracks get blown off. pen that tank a lot. The low has very good penetration though, so it's hard to contend even with the strong KB4 armor. Back off a little bit here. So I don't know what happened there. The KB4's armor, it's not as great as I as I thought it was, I guess. The lower front plate is pretty weak on it just because it's very flat. So unless it's angled at a really high angle, or if it's hidden, it's gonna be pretty easy to pen with anything above 200mm penetration. If I was facing like another T29 there, or like an IS, then they'd have a very hard time trying to pen me. The low has 235mm penetration, which I should have thought about before pushing up as far as I did, but it's alright. So our IS-7's game is done. See how we did in that game. We only blocked 1,000 with our armor. We weren't really able to use the strongest part of the IS-7, which is the turret. The turret's definitely the strongest piece of armor on the IS-7. So we'll do some lower tier stuff here. KV-1 is probably the best tank to learn how to angle correctly. Or angle effectively, I should say, because each tank you have to angle it a little bit differently based on how its armor is laid out. So we're bottom tier here. Most of the tanks are tier 5 though on both teams, which is good. We're on defense. With the changes to this map, I like to hold in the middle most of the time. Yeah, we'll go to the middle. We'll see what we could do. You try to get some more city maps. Those are the best to demonstrate England, but open maps, I mean, it's all the same, pretty much. You just want to do your best to get people to bounce off your armor. I'll play some medium tanks too, because there's it's still important to angle no matter what tank you're playing, not just in heavy tanks. I like going to this mid-ridge on the fence here because you're able to get a lot of vision for your team. And you're able to put a lot of pressure on the enemy team. And deny them from spotting all your tanks. Luke's pushed up to a pretty aggressive spotting position, but it's not bad on this map. The only problem is if there's someone where I'm at now, I have shots on them, as you can see. Another one's coming in to join his buddy. So we'll play up here, see what we could see on this ridge line. Artie's targeting us right now. Gotta be careful of that. They have a lot of heavy tanks 1-2 area. Not too much stuff in the middle, which is pretty good for us. GW Panther hit us for a lot there. The only problem with the KV-1, in my opinion, is the view range. View range is terrible on this tank, so on maps like this, it definitely suffers a lot. I'm gonna try to get some supporting fire in on these heavies over here. Not too much up in the face stuff we're getting. A43 had a good shot on me from distance. I managed to bounce off him. I hit his side armor at a crazy angle. I aimed it pretty well, but RNG just took it off. Let's do some medium tank action here. E50M, arguably one of the best armored medium tanks at tier 10. Its hull definitely is frontally. Its turret isn't as strong as like a 62A's or Object 140's even, just because there's flat parts on it. But there is the manlet here, like the nose cone, I guess you could call it. It'll eat shots all day, so if you just wiggle your turret slightly, you can catch some shots with it. Go to the middle here, try to get some spots off on the enemy. Gotta be careful here because of Arya, as usual. Don't want to sit up on the ridge too long. People position themselves on the 1-2 line, they might have been able to get shots at me as well, so. While the frontal armor, the E50 is really good, the side armor is not that great. It's decent. It can bounce some shots at some crazy angles, but it's not too reliable. That's due to the fact that there's very little spaced armor on the side. It's not very thick. Have some shots on this T-54 here. When you're in the mid position on this side of the map, I always recommend taking out that yellow building there, so you're able to get a lot more shots up on the ridge. You have to be careful people poking up like that and spotting you because of what just happened to me. Or you could shoot guys over there, they could also shoot back obviously, so you gotta be careful. These are all easy to pin shots. I have the sides of most of these tanks. Looks like these two guys are actually giving me their front, which is interesting. With the amount of penetration I have on this gun though, it doesn't matter too much for a Carnivon. But you do have to be careful of IS-3s no matter what you're shooting at them with. Their side armor is very trolly and it can absorb even the highest penetrating shells. Our E4 is pulling up pretty far. Go put some pressure on him. See there, I'm wiggling my turret just to, in case he was to fire, just to try to hope that he bounces. Interesting thing about this turret is if it's faced straight at the enemy, the sides are actually at an angle which it's auto bounce for most penetration guns. So there are a lot of zones on the front of the turret where you actually bounce off, even though the front of it is relatively weak. See that IS-7 has upper plate lifted up slightly, so it's that much easier to pin it than where my position was. Now we're just cleaning it up. The T-49 came pretty close to me there. So not too much bouncing we could have done that game. It's hard on these bigger maps. City maps are definitely where armor angling comes in to play the most, but even on hills and inclines and stuff, you have to try to remember to take all that into consideration when firing at enemies and when trying to bounce enemy shots. So take a look at this tank. It has pretty good armor frontally on the hull and on the turret, and it has a rounded turret, which is always better than a flatter turret. So we got no artillery. Top tier, obviously, tier 10, you're always top tier, but a decent amount of tier 9s on the enemy team. About half and half with tier 10s and tier 9s. That's pretty good. I'm gonna move up to this a window position here where I could use my turret very effectively and try to get some free shots on the enemies as they cross. There's a piece of rubble in the way there. Sometimes they're able to shoot through some of that rubble. It's weird. Depends on where you're at. Fortunately, shots aren't landing dead on here. Keep going wide right, hand the wall. I need to get in here and help these guys out, though. Our IS-7's getting overwhelmed by lots of enemy tanks. Get right in the fight here. Try to put some damage on these guys. See here, I'm side scraping. He managed to shoot my tracks, didn't pen me. Retrack him there. Right now, I'm just trying to be a thorn in these guys' butts. Just trying to annoy them, make them have to turn their turrets so that my friendlies get better shots on them, or so that I could just keep doing damage like this. BKB's coming around. He has very, very strong frontal armor for tier 9, and even in tier 10 games his armor is very effective. There the IS-7 shot my tracks, but there's no whole armor to pen, so as you can see, the way I'm working this, I'm always paying attention where enemy tanks are, always trying to angle where the next threat's going to be. And using cover effectively too. Even though I'm out in the open here, pretty much, I'm still using or paying attention to angles of fire that the enemy could get on me. Doing some more side scraping here. E5 was trying to side scrape and get me. IS-4 is coming up behind me. Should be able to beat this E5's reload. Possibly. 430 came around, took me out though. Got a little bit too overwhelmed. I lost some hit points with a little bit bad play. I'm gonna do one more quick game in the mouse and then just recap the armor angling, and then I'll be done with this tutorial stream. So we got Sacred Valley again with the mouse. Encounter battle this time though. Decent amount of tier 10s and 9s on both teams. So armor should hold up fairly well. Those E100s on the enemy team are probably going to be firing heat, which definitely poses a threat to my turret front. Not too much to my lower plate if I give them more whole armor, just because the spaced armor on the side and the tracks have a very high chance of just absorbing the heat shells. Try getting into the fight here. Again, the mouse is definitely not known for its speed. A good shot on the move on that 103 there. Yeah, I'm just trying to find as much cover as I can, even though I'm pretty much out in the open here. Angle of my armor pretty good. I7 bounced off. I noticed the C100's not looking at me. His his lower plate was angled up at me. Fortunately, the shot went low, hit the bottom of his tank, which at that angle was never gonna pen. I'm gonna push up here, play this corner a little bit more. Have my turret angled. They're not the best angling for where that E100 was, but he's firing AP, which has fairly low penetration for tier 10. So he bounced off. BK shot my upper plate. That's never gonna pin from where he was, at least. I'm gonna try to cross the open here. Actually, no, not yet. It's a little too dangerous to do that. I do want to get across and put some more pressure up on that I7. We'll see when I can see that. Okay, for a huge chunk of damage there. I think that was a T92 AP shell. Not positive. We'll have to check after the fact. The medium tank that was here isn't holding down these 100s anymore. Managed to die, which is not good for me. Just trying to angle my butt here as best as I can because this IS-8's coming up behind. T92 finished me off. Up like this, it's difficult with the mouse. It's definitely a lot more suited to city maps when it comes to trying to angle armor. When you start getting outflanked and stuff like that, there's not too much you could do. You can, I mean, definitely especially in the mouse, angle your butt to try to get bounces, but it's still not going to be reliable. At least not as reliable as the front would be, obviously. But that's going to be it for this armor angling tutorial. As far as the gameplay though, we'll go over or recap everything about armor angling here. So just remember that the greater the angle that you're shooting at a target, the less chance you actually have of penetrating it. You want to try to get it as close as possible to going straight through a piece of armor. And that's why most tanks have, especially in the later tanks you see, because in real life when they started designing tanks, they didn't use angled armor, like pre-angled armor, and then once they realized how effective or how much it increased armor for it increased the armor a lot, but you actually used less overall armor, which means the tanks can go faster and still have more effective armor. That's why they started angling armor. And remember with the type of shells too, the AP has the most normalization, APCR has the second most, and heat has none. So just keep all that in mind when angling armor, and you'll be bouncing a lot more shells. So that's gonna be it for now. Thank you guys for watching, and